Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Today is Friday, November 19th, 2021, and we're just going to dive right into it because, boy, oh boy, is it a big day for news all over the world. Whether you're in Africa, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in, North America, you name it, whether you're in Russia, whatever it is, lots and lots of news going on today. So, first off, we're going to be jumping all over the place a little bit. I tried to organize it as best I can, but so much news has been coming out, I figured let's dive into it. So, Germany's incoming coalition government has now officially agreed to legalize cannabis. Again, I'm going to be honest with you folks. I live in Canada. That's my primary country of residence. Obviously I'm a citizen here and all that. Marijuana has been legalized to a very large extent, and I have to say, it doesn't seem to be creating any issues as it pertains to people driving and things like that. Don't get me wrong. There are still very significant issues, but again, I would dare to say that marijuana is far safer than alcohol in many different regards, and that's no disrespect to people who like alcohol. I've had my fair share of drinking too, and I fully understand that. But again, if as long as the people are okay with it and the official process of the way in which they wanted to legalize this in a legislative manner went through, so be it, right? And if they don't like it, there could always be appeals and things like that. The next thing is that, according to the FBI, Iranian nationals have been charged with interfering in the 2020 U.S. presidential election. I gotta be skeptical of the fact that this might be a diversion tactic, and I'm not saying that because, again, when I say diversion tactic, I don't mean that there weren't Iranians that interfered or not. That's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm saying they could have taken this and the FBI could have taken this example of these two individuals and have, sensationalized or exaggerated it. And I say that because, as we will see shortly in the upcoming news points that I'll be covering in a couple minutes, the FBI, and again, for those that are members that have, listened to the conversation I've had with Maria Farmer, you name it, in addition to some others that you'll be seeing shortly, the FBI is not all, fine and dandy. They're no spring chicken, ethically, morally, you name it. We have to remember too, the FBI initially was set up in order to, in a lot of regards, arguably protect the Italian mob back in the day when the mob had a very strong influence within America. That's quite a debate, the J. Edgar Hoover building, that whole thing there. But with that being said, this is why I have to question these things, especially, which takes me to my next point pertaining to the FBI using counterterrorism tactics and labeling, counterterrorism tactics, against that of parents who are opposing critical race theory. Now, whether you're for critical race theory or not, I'm not trying to get into that whole debate. The point is, take a step back. Look at what's happening here. Whether you're for it or not, put politics aside. A domestic agency, a national agency, has decided to therefore now use terrorist-like tactics against parents. What happened to freedom of speech, expression? Don't even get me started. Now, what this reminds me of when Annie Jacobson went on Joe Rogan 2 or 3 years back, and she made a great point, in my opinion, talking about how, the government in generally tends to switch the names of the things they do because of the labeling in order to sort of get public approval to do such things. For example, it's not waterboarding, it's enhanced interrogation. Back in the old days during, with Reagan and Kennedy, the presidential kill list, which does exist, they would change the words up every administration. Every 4 to 8 years, they would change the terms. It's not the kill list. It's it's the preemptive consolidation list. Think about that, preemptive consolidation. Like, you see what I'm trying to get at here. So the FBI will use these tactics and then say, counterterrorism tactics, but no, it's not really, but it might be. This is the problem, and it just comes down to one thing. I don't trust the people at the top, just my opinion. But the next thing is that the Oklahoma Governor Stitt has granted clemency and has commuted Julius Jones's death sentence to life without parole following public pressure. Again, this is great to see, assuming there was no corruption here and the people were really, outspoken and wanting Mr. Jones here, Jones's death sentence to be removed, and they feel, it was not necessary. Great. I don't, personally at least, I don't believe, people should die for no reason. Again, that's when a bit of a moral, ethical debate there, so I don't want to just paint that with a broad brush, so to speak. But anyways, the next thing is that NBC has admits the incident, claims no wrongdoing, and says they regret the incident and will fully cooperate with the authorities on any investigation. Those that are not familiar with this, let me explain. This has to do with the Kyle Rittenhouse jury, was followed home 2 nights ago, as of the day I'm recording this, if I'm not mistaken. One of the jurors was followed home by, I believe, an MSNBC reporter. This is interesting, right? MSNBC, NBC, I believe they're one and the same, or they're sister companies or something like this. But we see here now, again, the way in which there was witness intimidation or witness tampering by a mainstream media outlet. If I don't want to get the facts wrong, so I don't want to say, at first they denied it or didn't or yada yada. A lot of speculation, a lot of, rumors flying at the time that this initially came out. However, to follow this up, Kyle Rittenhouse, as of the time I'm recording this, has been found not guilty on all charges. So again, we're going to see here. Now, at the same time, sources have been saying, these are not my sources, this is what I've been reading all over the place, that a lot of these mainstream media outlets could, in fact, if they don't retract and apologize real quick, and even then, they could still be sued for defamation for calling Kyle Rittenhouse a mass murderer, things like this, and maybe even worse. You know what? This is what I say, like when, GoFundMe took down Kyle Rittenhouse's campaign, his fundraiser rather, in order to help fund his legal fees. I think he raised close to $1 million, if not more. Then GoFundMe took it away, and I don't think they gave him the money either. Don't quote me on that second part, but the point is this. This is what I'm saying. This is why I don't like to comment on things at the time, because it divided so many people, and now we see with the evidence what's really coming out. This is why I like to say, I'm not trying to say I told you so, but I like to say, folks, let's take a step back. Let's be neutral. And let's see what the ruling has to say and what the process of that ruling. Was there any corruption, what have you? The only corruption there seems to be was that the mainstream media is so pissed off they tried to intimidate a juror. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, really? So again, you take a look at this and you see that this is just insane. It really is. So anyways, the next thing is that Germany has imposed new curbs on unvaccinated people. Participation in public life is about to be restricted based on the hospitalization rate. German Vice Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who's expected to succeed Merkel, said, and I quote, "To get through the winter, we'll see drastic measures that have not been taken before," end quote. Yeah. You see, this is where it starts to get interesting because, again, I'm not German. I've never, I haven't been to Germany. And again, at least to the best of my recollection, and it's for the German people to decide, in my opinion. Now, here's the thing: if the German people in large part disagree, the question is, how do you voice that concern? They say protest, right? But again, going back to my point, sounding like a broken clock, even my point being that even a broken clock is right twice a day, meaning that, again, are the politicians going to outlast the protesters or not? Like, what's really going to happen here? What's going to occur here in order for this to not happen, so that people can get what they want in other regards? Now, again, if the vast majority of people in Germany say, "Hey, we want this to happen," so be it. What else can I say, right? So. The next thing is that the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki has said nothing has changed. Business should go forward. She said those words pertaining to the OSHA court-ordered federal vaccine mandate. So despite 2 court orders to stop the OSHA federal vaccine mandate, she goes, no, just keep carrying on. I thought Trump was the one messing with destroying democracy. You see what I'm saying here, folks? I think the lesson we should learn here is not about Trump versus Biden, left versus right. If I'm being consistent, if we look at Iran-Contra back in the day, you name it, they'll break the law whenever they want, Republican or Democrat, in my humble opinion. We're seeing that more and more, right? Speaking of which, Kamala Harris's communications director has left the administration after reports that the staff are infighting and her boss is being sidelined. I mean, okay, she has left, it's official, so I mean, it is consistent with that. So the next thing is that Biden's $1.8 trillion Build Back Better plan would add $367 billion to the U.S. deficit over 10 years, CBO says. However, the White House claims the Build Back Better plan would reduce the deficit by $112 billion over the next decade in its new analysis. Now, here's the thing. First off, I don't care who says what analyst says, what the White House says, you name it. People keep saying, what's in the Biden Build Back Better plan? You see how it started off as like this big spending bill, and then all of a sudden, once the lobbyists got involved, it went from being, net zero emissions bill and all that stuff to all of a sudden roads and bridges. That's what they say every time they introduce a mass spending bill. Roads and bridges. They tweet about it. They all do. Republican, Democrat, we need roads and bridges. I don't even see the fresh roads and bridges being built. Now, as it pertains to the second part of this claim, it says here, the White House claims the Build Back Better would reduce the deficit by $112 billion over the next decade in its new analysis. I want to be very clear here, folks. From my understanding, someone please correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe there is a difference between the overall debt of the nation and the deficit of a nation. There's a difference. You can't mix up the debt with the deficit. If I'm not mistaken, the deficit is the yearly spending debt on a yearly basis or a bi-yearly basis, something of the sort. Don't quote me on it, but I do know there is a difference. The debt is the overall debt in which a nation holds. It's either that or it's flipped around the other way. Please forgive me for not having my facts straight, but I do know for a fact that there is a difference. So the next thing is that Austria has imposed a nationwide lockdown for 20 days for the entire population from Monday and will force the entire population to be vaccinated as of February 2022. It is the first European country and one of the first in the world to impose compulsory coronavirus vaccination. You see, this is what I'm concerned about. This is what I was saying in the sense of not trying to fearmonger. All it takes is one European nation to fall, metaphorically, in my eyes, and then the rest just like a domino effect. They just follow, right? The next thing is that Hillary Clinton has said that Bitcoin threatens the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency and destabilizes the nations around the world. I'm going to leave that there. She got paid a boatload of money, I'm sure. I saw some of the clips of when she said it. She was speaking at, those mainstream media elite conferences of the whole thing. They're so detached from reality. Now, putting the crypto thing aside, too. Whatever. The next thing is that the FDA has approved Pfizer and Moderna's vaccine booster shots under emergency use authorization for all adults in the U.S. Again, emergency use authorization. Excuse me. I can't really speak today, but they're glowing right over the fact that it's an emergency use authorization. Again, I'm just going to leave that there. The next thing is that Germany has produced. Their producer price inflation has jumped 18.4% year on year in October, the highest increase since 1951. Again, it's We'll see what happens. I'm not an expert economist, so I don't want to just sit here and say the world's going to hell, generally speaking, because you can take that out of context in so many ways. So let's leave that there for now. The next thing is that Biden planned to transfer power to Kamala Harris while undergoing a colonoscopy under anesthesia. Harris would be the first woman to hold presidential powers as Biden undergoes the physical. His Walter Reed visit was not included in Thursday night's preview of the White House daily schedule. From my understanding, he has now been given his powers back, presidential powers back. Again, we're just going off of word of mouth here. That's what it's come down to because we see how much the mainstream media lies, right? Kamala did hold power for a little bit. He says that he's back. Biden also said that he stands by the jury's decision in the Rittenhouse trial. He said, I feel great, I quote, I feel great, and so I'm now looking forward to celebrating my 58th birthday, end quote. 58th? Did he say 50? I can't believe he said that. Oh my God. Okay, the White House is gonna say, he's still under anesthesia, the whole thing. Yeah. Okay. So how do you explain the gaffes and all the other crap? Anyways. The next thing is that many U.S. media outlets and journalists labeled Kyle Rittenhouse, who acted in self-defense, a mass murderer or worse, and many now face defamation lawsuits, as I mentioned earlier, so we'll move on from that. The next thing is that the FDA has asked a federal judge to make the public wait until the year 2076 to disclose all of the data and information it relied upon to license Pfizer's COVID vaccine. That should tell you all you need to know right there, but it gets even better or worse, depending how you want to look at it. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis plans to sign bills stopping the federal vaccine mandate at a press conference in Brandon, according to Media Advisory. Good. I mean, this is just my opinion saying good, but it's more so about the freedom of things rather than that of, the control narrative, if you will. We can decide the politics later, but this is, in my opinion, blatant medical apartheid. The next thing is that the DOJ has sentenced Jacob Chansley to 41 months in prison. For those who don't know who he is, that's the QAnon shaman. So, again, make of that as you will. I don't really know where I stand on that, honestly, but again, speaking of which, we will get... we will be covering the fact that Bill Gates, basically, if I can see here very quickly, pardon me, essentially funneled, Bill Gates had given $319 million and probably a lot more to selected media outlets to amass considerable influence over certain narratives, according to an investigation done by Mint Press News. I got a lot of respect for Mint Press News, and I'll tell you why. Whitney Webb used to work there. I think she's done a fantastic job with her investigative journalism. So again, when we see things like that, it really makes you think. That's why I say good news, bad news, tit for tat, right? DeSantis does that, but then we find this out about Gates, right? The next thing is that the U.S. reduces Strategic Petroleum Reserve by 3.2 million barrels, the lowest deposit level since 2003, according to the EIA. It's interesting to see this the alleged strategy going on here, right? So again, we'll see what happens, but We'll follow up on that in a second. The next thing is that thousands protest in Iran's Isfahan to demand the revival of the river. Protesters gather on the dried up riverbed of the Zayende Rud River, demanding action to return water to the river. Again, this is what the people want. The government should listen. But here again, it's the government of Iran, and I'm not trying to downplay any of that. I have a lot of Iranian friends, great people, but it's the regime that's more divisive, conflictual, you name it. So that's where the sort of issue comes into play there. The next thing is that Hamas reacts with fury as Britain moves to ban the group. The UK Home Secretary Priti Patel is pushing to ban the Palestinian movement under the Terrorism Act. Okay, we can talk about, the Mossad and the Israeli government, not the people, the Israeli government's influence on this. However, again, this is one of those things where when you look at Hamas, it's up to individual perception as to whether or not this is a terrorist group or not. And I'm not trying to create a cop-out answer or dodge discussing this. The reason why I say this is because it really depends how deeply ingrained within a particular culture you were grown up in. Now, don't get me wrong. When you might be thinking, Dave, what the hell? Hamas is a terrorist group. What are you talking about? Well, it's hard to say. In theory, yes, technically, but again, relative to whose perception, I'm not defending them. What I'm saying here is that we need to be neutral and take our emotion out of it, in my opinion at least, and say, okay, where do they, again, this is one of those things, in my opinion, you can't resolve and have, the people with it that are part of Hamas living amongst others unless they truly believe in the same, cultural beliefs, moral, ethical beliefs, which is why I think in some cases you would take up the example allegedly of what some of these extraterrestrial factions do, which is literally just stay out of our way, we stay out of yours, mind your own business, and, we politic whenever we need to, whenever we step on each other's feet by accident, so to speak. The next thing is that Iran has condemned U.S. sanctions over bid to meddle in the 2020 vote. The U.S. Justice Department has indicted 2 Iranians over the online disinformation and threat campaign to influence U.S. voters in presidential elections. Again, we see here, for example, that, the U.S. slapped sanctions on Iran. Again, they're doing that again with Nicaragua, saying that they denounce what's going on there. I think with Ortega, if I'm not mistaken. We got to look at all angles here, folks. I'm not telling you what to believe. At least I hope I'm not. But we got to look at every angle before we say, hold on, is our nation, whether it's, you live in Italy, Germany, Spain, you name it, or U.S., Canada, is our nation really, are they really the good guys here, right? The next thing is that the largest trove of leaked African bank documents showed a private bank in the Democratic Republic of Congo was used to channel at least $138 million of public funds to former President Joseph Kabila's family and associates, according to Reuters. Again, it's corruption. They got caught. It's as simple as that. I mean, that's the reality of things. The next thing is that global investment money is flooding into Africa's fintechs. Fintech startups drew more than 60% of all venture funding that flowed into Africa last quarter. We got to keep an eye on Africa, whether it's the CCP, whether it's the U.S., we're going to see. Speaking of which, Biden plans to hold an Africa summit to boost cooperation, according to Antony Blinken. The announcement comes during the U.S. Secretary of State's first official trip to sub-Saharan Africa. Again, I could see maybe they're trying to play catch up with China in this regard. There's much more deeper intrinsic covert and intelligence apparatuses that are involved with Africa, in my opinion, at a multi-pronged scale, if you ask me. The next thing is that India's Prime Minister Modi says he will repeal the controversial farm laws. He says he's decided to withdraw 3 farm laws that sparked year-long protests. Yeah, I mean, those really did. I figured he was going to do this. I had a feeling, putting politics aside, people were too upset, in my opinion. So the next thing is that Biden has pushed China, India, and Japan to release their oil reserves. According to sources, the U.S. is seeking a coordinated release of crude stockpiles to lower global energy prices. Again, they may be fighting with one another, these other nations and things like that. But again, if it's in the interest of all of them, it's possible that they will do it. More so, I'm speaking of China, like the CCP. The next thing is that there is a political shakeup on the horizon as Chile plans to elect a new president. Leftist and far-right presidential candidates are 2 clear frontrunners heading into the Chilean elections on Sunday. Okay, presuming there's no corruption and all that, let's see what happens. Let's see what the people want. The next thing is that North American leaders hail ties but fail to resolve tensions. In the first U.S., Canada, Mexico summit in 5 years, there have been strains over trade and immigration concerns looming large. Yeah, apparently the meeting between the Mexican President Trudeau and Biden didn't really go too well. I didn't even know Trudeau went there. I mean, it's so funny to see Trudeau being heckled in a town over from where I live, and then at the same time, this guy's at this, in my opinion, this joke of a guy's in the White House with Biden over there. So, just goes to show you that you can do anything in life if you put your mind to it. The next thing is that the Amazon deforestation in Brazil has surged to a 15-year high. The Space Research Agency findings come after the Brazilian government at the COP26 Climate Summit pledged to end illegal deforestation by 2028. Again, I'm not putting the whole, official narrative aside and things like that. I don't like to see when personally, I don't like to see when such things occur. It's unfortunate to see with any natural, area of the planet. For me, I'm very simple in that regard. The next thing is that China is using the maritime militia to assert claim on the South China Sea. New reports find that Beijing is funding hundreds of vessels that it uses to back its expansive claim in the disputed waters. Tit for tat, it's a chess game, right? The next thing is that collapse of tourism has cost 5 Asian nations 1.6 million jobs, according to the UN. These nations include Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Mongolia, and Brunei. Again, it's... Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. There was going to be damage because of the pandemic. Granted, initially, people didn't know what this was, you name it, right? Presuming it's legitimate for the sake of YouTube and things like that, I gotta say. But we could also argue very strongly they didn't have to lose that much. Again, this just goes to show you Big Pharma seems to take precedent on a global scale in many regards, and it's so sad. The next thing is that we see here, House Republicans have obtained whistleblower documents showing that the FBI is using counterterrorism tools to investigate and add, quote, threat tags, quote, to American parents. This contradicts Attorney General Garland's sworn testimony, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah, so again... let's see what comes of this. The next thing is that FBI agents have searched a plot of land in the U.S. state of New Jersey after a deathbed confession renewed hope of solving union boss Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance 50 years ago. Why are they still looking into this? The Jimmy Hoffa thing? You know many people like Michael Francis, that former mobster, he says, trust me, he did a Reddit AMA. He goes, believe me, they'll never find Hoffa's body. Some people say that, it was cut up into a car and then squished and then, I don't know the mystery anymore at this point. I feel like it's just the mystique behind it is gone, but, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. The next thing is that Belarus's authoritarian leader has told the BBC it is, quote, absolutely possible, end quote. Again, the BBC calls him authoritarian. I'm skeptical of that because, again, if I'm not on the ground myself, I don't believe neither CNN or Fox News, to give you an example. But he says it is absolutely possible his forces helped migrants cross into Poland, but denies they were invited. Thousands of migrants, mainly from the Middle East, have been trying to get into the EU via Belarus for months. In an exclusive interview, Alexander Lukashenko said, quote, we're Slavs. We have hearts. Our troops know the migrants are going to Germany. Maybe someone helped them. I won't even look into this, end quote, he added. Hey, at least he's being completely brutal and honest. At least he's not BSing and saying, we'll all conduct a preliminary investigation or, yada, yada, that kind of crap. No, at least he's saying, I'm not going to do it. I don't care. I got to give him, props for being blunt and straightforward, right? The next thing is that, the final thing is that female workers at Tesla's Fremont factory in California face, quote, nightmarish conditions of rampant sexual harassment, according to a lawsuit brought by a female employee. Jessica Barazza, who worked night shifts at the factory, said she experienced near daily catcalls and inappropriate touching. Miss Barazza is seeking compensatory and punitive damages from the firm. Tesla did not respond immediately to requests for comment, end quote. Look, we got to be consistent. We got to be fair, regardless of the workplace, regardless of if we like the company or not. If there are sexual harassment allegations, it should be followed through with the appropriate procedure and legal proceedings necessary to determine what's going on there. I think that's a load of... Look, I understand it's natural biology for men to be attracted to women. I know, again, that maybe I might get shit on for saying that these days because, with the LGBTQ community and all that kind of stuff. But putting that all that aside, I got respect for everyone, again, relative to my views on just not over-sensationalizing things relative to, trying to just get attention. But can't, guys just, and I'm easier said than done, but can't guys just not, do that in a certain way? There's a respectful way of showing a woman, I would imagine, that you are interested in them, whether it's, sexually or otherwise. I really do believe there's a respectful way of doing it. Why it can't be done the respectful route? Again, is hard to say. Now, people, your version, your definition of respect might be different than mine, but I think generally speaking, using common sense, we would all kind of gather, at least if we've been born on this planet Earth, what that would mean and lead to, right? So without further ado, we got a live stream coming today. We got a early access and a members only episode coming, both for the members this weekend. Lots more coming as well, working on behind the scenes, and we'll catch all of you very, very soon. Cheers.